Okay, I think we might pretty much all be here. So this week we're on lesson two of Joseph, and we're looking at chapters 40 and 41. A couple more dreams going on there. Okay, but let's just review from last week a little bit about Joseph's life. What do we know about Joseph's life up to this point? Remember that we had his life in ups and downs, okay? Which started like on and up when he was favorite son. And then what happened to him? His brothers sold him. And then what happened to him? Where did he end up?
Overseer for Potiphar.
For Potiphar. So he was, and who was Potiphar?
Pharaoh.
He was over the house of Potiphar, who was what? Captain of Pharaoh's army. Okay.
Oh, right.
Right. Captain of Pharaoh's army. So he puts him over in charge of his house. Then what happens?
His wife and left him in prison.
Right. So Potiphar's wife tries to entice him, and what does he do? He runs, leaving his coat. And he ends up in prison. Again, he didn't do anything except maybe taunt his brothers to get here. And then in slavery, he gets put over the house of Potiphar. And then he didn't do anything. He did the right things. And he ends up in prison because of Potiphar's wife. And what happens in prison? He's favored, okay? And he gets put over the prisoners, okay?
Still in prison. I wouldn't make it quite as high as the other one. There you go.
Okay? So he's over the prisoners. And then, what happens to him?
He's forgotten. By the guard. Or by the cupbearer.
Yeah, so here he is down here again. So he's forgotten by the cupbearer. So we're gonna talk about this today. Not so far down. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And in all of that time, what do we see about God? It says God was with him. God was with him. God was with him. So God was like the steady in all of this. And Joseph's life was going through all these ups and downs and ups and downs, okay? So let's look at chapter 40. Chapter 40. Chapter 40. Because it says sometime after this. Sometime after what? Yeah, after 39 when he had, what was 39? My mind just went blank. Oh, right. Okay, so sometime after this, now he's in prison. Okay, he's in prison. Now what happens? Who are the characters that we see here? The baker, the cupbearer, the candlestick maker. I don't think he's in this chapter. Yeah, the baker and the cupbearer. Now, they get thrown in prison, right? The same place where Joseph is. Now, what happens? What happens? What's that?
Joseph found favor with the captain of the guards.
Right, and so he's in a high position here. Whoops, here. Okay, and now the cupbearer and the baker come into this same prison. So they're under Joseph, and they have dreams. Interesting thing. Look at verse 6 and 7. Look at Joseph. Marianne, what are you're shaking your head, yes.
Yes, he saw that they were downcasted.
Yeah.
They weren't doing okay.
Yeah.
He noticed that.
Yeah. He noticed that. He noticed that. And so he said, what's the problem, right? He took that initiative. He noticed their distress. Yeah. But he's in prison. Okay. Yeah.
It's just remarkable that he notices something even more downcast than the fact that they're in prison.
Yeah.
Like he notices that, okay, yes, you're in prison, but there's
Yeah, I would've
something
been,
more.
Duh.
Yeah.
I'm in prison.
Right. Yeah. 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 What's the problem? Well, here I am in prison. But yeah, but I just noticed that this morning actually when I was going over this again. It's like, no, he's noticed that they were downcast and he said to them, what's wrong? What's wrong? And again, speaks to the character of Joseph. Yeah.
Not that he wasn't troubled himself,
Right.
because it didn't really speak to that.
Yeah.
But I could tell he wasn't really excited about being there. I mean, he obviously, we learned in that chapter that he
Yeah.
wanted to get out,
Right.
but he didn't let that overtake him.
Right.
He was still leveled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge lesson right there. 'Cause he was ministering to people in prison, okay? And I was thinking this morning about other people that we know of in history that have been in prison for doing nothing wrong, but ministered to people in that prison, you know, the whole time they were in there. Can you think of anybody?
Commissioner Lord.
Who?
Commissioner Lord.
Commissioner
Lord.
Lord? Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
He was an Oriental officer, and he was put on the march, maybe Korea.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And went into prison.
And what did he do in there, in prison?
He ministered while he was in prison.
Yeah, right. Dietrich Bonhoeffer,
Corbell.
Corbell, Corrie ten Boom, yeah. Paul, the Apostle Paul, yeah. So even though you're in prison, you're in a bad place, but does that stop you from noticing, you know, other people and helping other people? You know, it's just not like poor me, poor me. Yeah. So the dreams, what about the dreams? They each had a dream.
They couldn't interpret them.
What about the interpretation?
They couldn't interpret them.
They couldn't interpret them. So what did Joseph say?
One good dream, one bad dream.
Okay, and what about the interpretation?
He said God is.
Right, right. He says God interprets dreams. God interprets dreams.
You know, those are, you want the good news or the bad news?
Yeah, yeah. It's like the good news came first, and then the baker. He's like, "Oh, this is going well. I think I'll ask about mine." Yeah, I'll ask about mine. But the point is, okay. The point is about do not interpretations belong to God. Joseph's like, God can interpret this for you. So what's the outcome of that?
The dreams the interpretation came true.
Yeah, the interpretations came true. So the cupbearer was restored, right? The baker, not so much. Not so much. Yeah. And when, at the end of chapter 40, when all of this happened, but when Joseph interpreted the cupbearer's dream, what did he say to him? Remember me. Remember me to who? So that I might get out. It's what Marianne was saying before. He wants out of there. So he's not in a good place, and he does want out. And he says, remember me to Pharaoh. And sadly, what does verse 23 say? He forgot him. He forgot him. Yeah. Mary?
When I read that, I thought about the thief on the cross. I don't know why I just thought of that.
Okay.
Remember me.
Remember me.
Just how human we are, we're so caught up in But
Mhm.
once we get where we are, we forget where we came from.
Oh, yeah,
I think Jesus definitely kept his promise to the thief.
yeah, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and the cupbearer, he just forgot about Joseph. Once he was back restored, it's like, yeah, forgot about him. But at that point, when Joseph he's in prison, and he's like, with the cupbearer, and he's like, I have hope. Okay, I have hope. He'll go to the Pharaoh and he'll tell the Pharaoh about me. So you have a little hope. But the cupbearer forgot him.
2 years. For 2 years.
Sorry?
For 2 years.
For 2 years. For 2 years. Okay. So that hope that he had was soon gone. It's like for 2 years. I mean, there's a lot of the dreams, but we want to look past the dreams to Joseph. You know, the dreams tell the story, but look at what Joseph is doing. Look at how he's responding. Look at what God is doing. So put yourself in Joseph's place. If you're in that prison, put yourself there and see, how would you react? How would you react? So he wasn't remembered by the cupbearer. So let's look at 41. Because this is how we know that it was 2 years, right? It's 41, because after 2 whole years, after the cupbearer said he would talk to Pharaoh and didn't. So now after 2 years, what happens in 41, in verses 1 through 46?
Pharaoh's having a dream.
Okay. What did you say, Heather?
Pharaoh's having a dream.
Now, just briefly, we know this story. Briefly tell me about these dreams. He had 2 dreams.
Fat cows, 7 fat cows.
7 skinny cows. 7, and the skinny cows eat the fat cows. And then 7 ears of corn, good ears of corn. And 7. Okay, he's not here. Just don't even pay any attention to him. Chair stealer. It's on video, you know. Yeah. So 7, it's the 7 fat cows, the 7 skinny cows, the 7 good ears of corn, and the 7 bad ears of corn. Okay, so now we get to who comes into the picture now? Verse 9. The cupbearer, what does he say? Oh, now I remember. Now I remember I was supposed to talk to Pharaoh. Yeah. Yeah. And why does he remember? The dream. And he's like, nobody can interpret him, but the cupbearer is like, I remember somebody who can. Okay. So then what happens? They brought him out. They brought him out of prison. It says they quickly brought him out of the pit. And I love the part, that's such a human part about what did he do before he went to see Pharaoh?
Took a bath.
Shaved himself, put on some clean clothes. Again, what does that tell you about prison? You know? What does it tell you about prison? It wasn't a good place. So when he goes before Pharaoh, what does he say?
I can't do it, but God can.
There you go, okay. Okay, God, he sticks to that. It's been 2 years, and he sticks to that now. God is the one who interprets. God is the one who interprets. So Pharaoh tells them the dreams about the 7. It's just repeated. And then Joseph, if you go to verse 25, talking about the dreams of Pharaoh are 1. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. So what is God about to do according to these dreams, according to the interpretation?
He's actually
Okay, okay. So there's going to be 7 what? Years of good, of plentiful, and then followed by 7 years of an extreme famine. Now, when does Joseph say this is going to happen? Immediately. Immediately. This is going to happen right now. So what does Joseph suggest to Pharaoh? Yeah.
Figure this out.
Find a good man, put him in charge, figure this out. Do it now. Do it now. What do you think about that? About Joseph saying to the Pharaoh, this is what you should do. Not only here's what the dreams are, but this is what you should do.
Pretty brassy.
Pretty brassy?
Bold,
Bold?
sure of himself.
Okay.
It's also pointed out that by the doubling of the dream,
Mm-hmm.
that it means that it was fixed and that it would come about very shortly.
Yeah. Right. It's like surely, surely. You know, when Scripture says surely, surely, you know for sure that's surely. Yeah. The doubling of the dreams. It's like this is fixed. God has determined this, and this is what's going to happen.
He also has the opportunity to push himself forward, and he doesn't. He just says, find a wife.
Okay.
He doesn't say, I'm the man.
Yeah. Yeah.
He had organizational ability because he's not just an overseer, but our appoint overseers throughout the land. So he's giving him like an organization chart as to how he's supposed to go about it. That's pretty crafty too.
Well, think back to here and here. Who was he over here? The overseer of Potiphar's whole house, right? Everything but his wife. And then here he's over all the prisoners. So where did he get his organizational skills? You know, you think that in these things, God is preparing him for the next. Mary.
When way back too with his brothers, his father, I feel like saw him as the overseer of his brothers too.
Yes.
He would be the reporter coming back
Mm-hmm.
to his dad.
Yeah, so all along in his life, God is preparing him for what's about to happen. So when he stands before the Pharaoh now, he's had experience, you know, of being in charge of things. But
He's the number 2 guy in those, right?
yeah, he's number 2 here,
Here, number 2 there.
Pharaoh, Potiphar. And number 2, because there is the captain of the prison, so he's number 2.
He's got a pretty good resume.
It's a good resume.
He's got a good reference with the captain of
Yeah.
the guard,
Hmm.
everything.
Yeah.
He also must have made a very good presentation, maybe by his boldness, maybe
Mhm.
by just, because Pharaoh begins to turn stuff over to him.
Yeah.
without- He didn't know who he was.
Hmm.
He came from the prison,
Right, right.
so there must have been something very special in the way that he presented himself.
Maybe use PowerPoint. Yeah.
He needed PowerPoint.
Yeah, yeah. But the confidence, again, the confidence with remember that Pharaoh's like, I have these dreams and nobody can interpret them. Nobody can interpret them. But Joseph comes along and says, God can. God can. And I like what Lori says about he didn't put himself forward. He could have. He didn't say, he just said, this is what you need to do. But he didn't say, I'm the man. Yeah, he had a plan. Where's that plan? Okay, 34. Yeah, appoint overseers of the land and take 1/5. I thought that was interesting. Take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 good years. Take 1/5. I thought, why not a 10th? You know, but 1/5. Okay, but that seemed to be enough, and it wasn't anything that people were going to miss apparently. So the 5th, it was. And how did that work? I mean, was that successful?
He also made storage areas in every location.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep, storage areas in every location. The food will be reserved for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur, so that nobody will perish in the famine. So that was his plan. And he tells to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh, what?
There's just another little interesting thing that Pharaoh put on him, was that anybody who was coming into the land of Egypt had to ask permission of Joseph to enter the land, to buy the food,
Right, right. Once he appoints him in charge of that.
which meant his brothers had to ask him for permission to come into the land.
Yeah, yep. When we get to that, when his brothers get there, yep. But he does, he puts him in charge of that. So who does Pharaoh choose to do this, and why? Why?
Because he recognized the Spirit of God in him.
Okay. And that's an important statement. He says there's no one else who has the Spirit of God.
Can we find a man like this?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important to remember, like, he had to get dressed up to come see Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh puts his ring on him. And
Yeah.
puts fine clothes and everything on him.
Yeah.
So, and then even changes his name.
So once he chooses, once Pharaoh says, since God has shown you all these things and there's no one discerning as you are, then he puts him in charge and he gives him his signet ring. What does that mean?
That's your meal ticket.
It's his authority, right? His authority.
And yeah, he said, only as regards to the throne will I be greater than you.
Yes. Again, he's going to be, so here he is up, and now he's over Egypt.
Make that line a little longer.
What's that? Make it longer? Yeah,
Oh, he's
make
way
it.
up.
Yeah, way up here. Yeah, he's over Egypt. Okay. But he's still second, right? He's still second. But obviously, he has a lot. He has a lot of authority. He's got the signet ring. He's got all the authority except for the throne, except for the captain, except for the wife. Okay.
He's got a gold chain around his neck.
Yeah, he has a gold chain around his
Which
neck.
I picture as this big,
Yeah,
fat gold chain.
Yeah.
you know, and-
yeah, yeah. All the bling. He gets the bling to go with it. Yeah,
Back up to the 1/5.
yeah. We're backing up to the 1/5 piece.
When you stop and think about it, in terms of numbers, 1/5 was gonna be enough. It tells you a little bit about how good the 7 years were.
Yeah.
Because it only took a fifth to get them through the next 7 years, and not only to get Egypt through the next 7 years, but we know in hindsight, there were other nations coming to Egypt to buy grain out of their surpluses
Right.
that were
Right.
in that 1/5.
Yeah.
So those 7 years were really good, not just okay good. They
Yeah.
were really
Yeah.
good, because 1/5 covered all that need.
Yeah.
I was thinking it would have been 1/7, because, okay, you take one.
Oh,
But then I
Yeah.
figure, oh, maybe he's allowing for spoilage and rodents and stuff to get their share of the
Yeah.
bread. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, but
Mind work too, for him to literally like that,
Yeah.
can think of the number
Yeah.
that he needs to make
Yeah.
that happen.
yeah.
I'm lost in math. Come on, Gavin, what do you think?
And he sets that number
Yeah, he
before
just-
even the first year of really good stuff. He doesn't know what that
Right.
is really gonna look like.
The gift of organizing that he had to do that.
So who do you think told him 1/5?
I don't know.
God, I think God was directing him.
You think so?
Thoughts, putting ideas in his head.
Yeah.
And putting ideas in his head. And guiding his steps, whether, just giving him information that he needed.
He knew how much was gonna be produced, I mean, he opened up the earth, right? So he
Right.
knew.
Right.
He caused it to flourish, so
Yeah.
he would know.
Yeah. He would know. Yeah. And we looked up a lot of the attributes of God that we're going to talk about in a minute too. But that the fact that He's all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful. Right. But that's such an interesting point about, and I think that we can take a lesson from. It's like the 1/5 shows you how plentiful it was, how much God blesses to get you through the famine years. You know, and you forget about, they said, you know, they'll forget about the plentiful times when the famine comes. You know, and is that true in our own lives? Do we forget about all the blessings that God gives us when the difficult times come? And if you look back, was the blessing so big, like that would be enough to get us through 7 years of famine, of drought? Yeah. Thanks, Ron, for that, because that really puts things in a good perspective about just how plentiful those 7 years are.
Well, maybe it tells us something to do about our good years too. Don't spend everything because we will have ups and downs.
Yeah.
Spoken just like a development man.
You would have been a good
Yeah.
retirement planner.
Right. Yeah. Good retirement planner. Yeah. 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 Don't spend everything you have. Put some in reserve. Right. Right. So that happened. Joseph. I mean, the good years were very good. And it says in verse 49, and Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured.
Lots of grain.
That's when, you know, God pours out the blessings abundantly. Okay. So that was, he just stopped even trying to measure it. What happened before the year of the famine came? So we're in the 7 good years. In the 7 good years, what happened in Joseph's life? Okay, he got married, and he had 2 sons. Okay. What do you learn about Joseph from the names of his sons?
Jewish were multiple. Ephraim name means be fruitful,
Uh-huh.
multiply. So
And what about Manasseh?
Joseph forgot his hardship. Oh, no, that was just my note, forget about that.
No, yeah,
Oh,
that's
you're
right.
right.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Manasseh, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house, and Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. This is one of his stories.
Summary of his life that we studied.
Yeah, it's the summary of his life. It's the summary of this, right? God has made me forget all of this. How long has he been in Egypt? 13 years. He was 17 here, and now he's 30. And he's been here in Egypt 17 years. And it says, naming his son, God has made me forget all of this bad time. And God has blessed me abundantly. And that's how he names his children. So God preparing him in these times for this, for beyond this, actually, for beyond this. So, and do you ever think about, when you're in a difficult situation, do you ever think about the fact that God is there, and he's preparing you for something? Joseph doesn't know yet what's coming.
That's what's so easy to forget.
Mm-hmm.
When you focus on the place that you are and the affliction,
Mm-hmm.
rather than focusing on God's plan in your life.
Right, right. And that's the human thing, isn't it? When you're here, this is what you focus on. When you're here, this is what you focus on. But in those difficult times, do you ever think I remember that God is right here. God was with him, God was with him, God was with him. God does the interpretations. God blesses him. It's hard to think about that here. But this is what God is working in his life here. God is working in his life here to bring him to this place, to then bring him to the next place.
Or he knows the plan, yes.
Yes, yes. What did you see in Psalm 105 about Joseph? In Psalm 105, that's on page, I don't know. I didn't write it down. 20, thank you. What do you see in Psalm 105 about Joseph? Because it's interesting that he's mentioned there. This is many, many years in the future.
And he was sold as a slave. His feet hurt with fetters.
Mm-hmm.
Neck, when he was in prison, neck in the collar of iron.
So here he is, sold as a
What he
slave.
said came to pass.
Mm-hmm. Everything he said came to pass.
The word of the Lord
Yeah.
tested him.
Yeah. So that gives us a little bit more of a picture of Joseph. But here's the thing. Psalm 105, I read the whole thing this morning, looking at context, okay? This is about Joseph. But this psalm is about the history of Israel, the nation of Israel. Okay? It's about what happened to them. It explains everything that happened to them, from Abraham to the covenant with Isaac and Jacob. And then it says in 16, and God called for a famine on the land, and he broke the whole staff of bread, and he sent a man before them. He sent a man before them, before the nation of Israel. Okay, so this is the bigger picture that I'm always talking about. Okay, so this is about God sending Joseph before the nation of Israel. Okay, remember, his brothers and his father are going to come. But Joseph was sent ahead to save them from the famine.
Right.
Okay. And this is just recounting the history. And that's what happened to Joseph. But God sent him ahead of his brothers and his father, which are the 12 tribes, the nation of Israel. So that's the bigger picture, God preparing him for that. You know?
It just seems like a lot of foreshadowing of Christ.
Oh, a lot of foreshadowing of Christ. Yes.
And before you said that, that really
Yeah.
was the linchpin there. But
Okay.
all this time I've been thinking
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of talk about garments and clothing and what they do with it. There's lots of talk about the timing of everything. So he was in prison for 2 years. On the third year, he was taken to Pharaoh.
Yeah.
On the third day,
Yeah.
Christ was raised. Like, so all these things that just feel like that
Mhm.
cinched it. For
Yeah.
him.
And then, yeah,
His suffering,
there's a lot of foreshadowing, right?
suffering to save his people.
Suffering to save his people, a lot of foreshadowing, right? So this is, but I just thought that, because I'm big on context, like you pull these verses out, well, okay, where do they fit? So read the whole chapter, the whole psalm, and it's like he's really talking about Joseph's part to play in the whole history of the nation of Israel.
It's interesting to me that God allowed all of that suffering to bring about his plan.
Mm-hmm.
All of his years in prison,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that he lost his family and he lost everything, that was all allowed to bring about his plan.
Yeah,
And sometimes we're saying, why is this happening to me?
right,
Where is God in all of this?
right. Where is God?
Nations belong to God.
He's right there.
He's right there. Yeah. Marianne?
No, I was saying, yeah, and that was one of the questions that I wrote down too, on on page 21, when they asked the questions at the top, just, yeah, why? And yes, God is with us, but in the moment, and I'm sure Joseph probably felt the same, when he's in prison, when nobody remembers him,
Right.
where's God there?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like but his plan is still going, it's
Right.
still in play,
Right.
his plan is never not in play,
Right.
no matter where we are.
Right. And Joseph, we can't see that when we're here. Joseph couldn't see the plan when he's here. But what do you have to know about God?
You have to trust him.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if he sees the plan when he's at the top either,
Okay.
because it's not done till you're with Christ.
Yeah.
Gone on to heaven, but the plan is always in play, every single day of your life.
And he had to do that all on his own. Like, he didn't have any influencers around him. He didn't have any high priests or,
Yeah.
like, he didn't even have the word of the law with him, like, he
Right.
had nothing other than God coming, like his own experience of God,
Mm-hmm.
which just reminds us that God is individual,
Yeah. Yeah, because remember how he ended up, he was in Canaan. So that's his homeland. And he ends up in Egypt with nobody. Yeah. Nobody.
I imagine all this emotion in that
All the
zigzag over
emotions.
here, all the emotion of, and I think the other thing is he's doing the right thing, like even in the house of
Yeah.
I would say his name. It's like doing the right thing, put him in prison.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about when he's the favorite of the father. I think
Yeah.
he's-
Yeah. Yeah.
Over here, he's not probably get him in trouble, but I think between the house of Potiphar and over the prisoners, all of this, he's making the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems as if all his right choice are putting him in difficult situation.
Mm-hmm.
And often we don't understand that even as believers.
Yeah.
We feel like we're, doing the right choice in our life, but life is still hard. And
Mhm.
it's the emotion to that, human emotion, it's
Yeah.
sometimes hard to get some.
So what do we do?
Yes,
If making the right choice gets us in prison.
There's also the whole question of him handling the resentment of what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Resentment against his brothers,
Mm-hmm.
resentment against Potiphar's wife. There's a sense of forgiveness in all of this, that it doesn't mar his personality
Yeah.
or his belief in God.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we hold on to resentment a long time.
No way. Don't know anybody who's done that. Yeah. Yeah. No, we do, and that's the thing. It's like, where does resentment get you? Well, I shouldn't ask that because where does doing the right thing get you? Yeah.
Yeah, but doing the right thing doesn't always mean it's gonna be easy.
Okay.
Like we experienced that this past summer, like taking a step of faith. It was the right thing, but it was hard. It was
Mhm.
really hard.
Yeah. So do the right thing. Anybody see Frozen 2? There's a line there that says something about, yeah, that's what everybody remembers, is that hunting, but it's like, it says, do the next right thing. Do the next right thing. And that's what we have to keep doing, is just do the next right thing, wherever you are. Because God is here. And the more you know about the character of God, the easier it is to do the right thing, even if. So we don't have a lot of time to talk about, you did this study on the attributes of God, which is really a good thing to have and to know and understand the full nature of God. And just for a minute, I want you to look at your homework on just before the attributes of God, when it talks about God and his, here it is, page 22. It says, when we speak of attributes, we are speaking of his essential being or character. His character is a composition of all his attributes. In other words, when we talk about one of God's attributes, we are not talking about a part of his being, but rather his whole character. For example, God is love, but not just a part of him is love. Love is the essence of his being. However, he is also wrathful. So one attribute does not contradict the other, rather they make God who he is. Therefore, whenever God acts in any given situation, all his attributes are used simultaneously in perfect harmony. He never suspends one so that he can use the other. So even when he's acting in wrath, he's doing it in love. Okay? So all of this works together. His compassion, his mercy, everything works together. To know, because we are his creation. And what does he want for us? He wants salvation, number one. But he is with us. Did you see any of God's attributes at play in Joseph's life? All of them? Name one or two. Okay, omniscience.
The very first man, he knows all.
Okay. Does he know when Joseph is here? It said he was with them. Okay. Omniscience. God sees everything. He knows everything. Okay. What else?
He's also merciful in suffering.
Okay, merciful.
Omnipotent? Omnipotent?
Omnipotent. Okay. How's that played out?
Well, it says here, God possesses all power. He brings about everything he decides to do with or without secondary causes. So I think he gave power to Joseph.
Okay, he gave power to Joseph. God is all powerful. He can save Joseph from the pit, right? He can also save Joseph from being killed with Potiphar. Okay? Powerful.
He's sovereign over all.
And he's sovereign. He's sovereign over all of this. He is sovereign over that. So I think two things from today is like, this is who God is. He never changes. Immutable is one of those traits. He never changes. He is who he is. And we should always do the right thing and let God work his plan. Just remembering that God, even in our down times, is preparing us. Preparing us. He's not left us. He's not left us. He's preparing us. But do the right thing. Well, at 17, we're not sure. Do the right thing here. 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 Do the right thing. And God, if you just remember this God line, that's going to be there all the time. All the time.
But it also tells us that it is going to be until the end of the world.
Yes, yes, until the end of the world. Yeah. It's easy for us to get caught up in looking at our circumstances right here. But we have to always look up, look at what God is trying to do. Look at the eternal plan. Look at the bigger picture. How is God using us in the bigger picture? Yeah. It's not about our personal happiness so much as it is about the picture of holiness and about the picture of salvation and God's plan for the world. The world. So.
I picked up one statement in here that really has kind of shaken me and given me a whole feeling, because going through all of these attributes sometimes is very hard.
Mm-hmm.
But it just simply said this: God is not like us. That he is above
Yeah.
any human being, and we often want him to act and deal with us
Mm-hmm.
like we're friends, like,
Okay.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
somehow you bring him down to a level where we're like this, you can see this God.
Yeah.
You understand how I'm feeling about this,
Mhm.
but he is not like us. He is so much above
Mm-hmm.
where
But
we are.
yeah, he is. But do you think he's still involved in our personal lives?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
He knows all.
Absolutely.
Nothing secret.
Right.
I know it's not like a new lesson, probably for anyone, but just seeing it again up there, it's easy to look laterally and get lost in everything that's around us, and to see, like where Joseph was, he could have been looking laterally and been like, I'm a slave, oh my gosh, I'm in prison, oh my gosh. But if you look up, you have a clear view of God. In all of this, even, this whole line,
Yeah.
if you look up, you have a clear view of God. And I think that's just what kept Joseph also consistent in his belief that God is with him, because he knows that.
Yeah.
He feels it, he sees it.
Yeah. Yep. So anybody else have any revelation about when you did the attributes of God? Anything new about God that you saw? Anything that stood out to you?
I think the biggest thing for me that I I often get hung up on the whys. Like they just nag at me all the
Yeah.
time. Like, why did this have to happen?
Mhm.
But just Joseph even saying, interpretations belong to God. God will reveal it to you, and it's easy sometimes to say that and just walk with it than others.
Yeah.
But if I can just remember, okay, God, in your timing,
Right,
I'll keep craving the answer, but
right.
I can.
You're still going to ask why, but,
Right.
but then,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. But then trust God.
Right.
Trust God for his timing, for his ultimate plan. Yeah, right. Good. Good. There is a really good study on the names of God that is very helpful to help you understand the big picture of God. It's something you might want to do when we are off this summer. I could try to remember to remind you about that when we're done, but I don't promise I will. But there is that study that you could do on your own that's called the Names of God, which is really beneficial in really understanding the big picture of God and all of this about how he acts. He does not separate those attributes one from another. They're all intertwined. Okay, so go and do the next right thing. Okay, do the next right thing.